Hi students, welcome to GDC classes. In this session, we will discuss the anatomy and physiology of digestive system. So we will get to know the different parts of the digestive system, how the food is digested, and how different secretions and the different enzymes influence the digestion process, and also the fate of the digested food and the undigested food. So let us dive into the subject. So let us start by knowing the definition of digestion. So digestion is defined as the process by which the food is broken down into smaller particles or smaller molecules so that it can be absorbed into the digestive tract. So the food we eat will be present in the form of large particles, and our digestive system or our digestive tract, it doesn't have the ability to absorb nutrients if they are present in their complex forms. So the larger particles, they have to be broken down into smaller particles so the food can be swallowed easily. And also the complex molecules, they have to be broken down into simple molecules or small molecules so that they can be absorbed by the digestive tract into the blood circulation. So the larger particles have to be broken down into smaller particles, and the larger or the complex molecules have to be broken down into simple or small molecules. And simply, you can say that digestion is the process by which our body will convert the food we eat into nutrients. And these nutrients are used for different purposes in our body, like for energy, for cell growth, cell proliferation, DNA synthesis, DNA replication, etc. So whatever the activities that takes place in the cells of our body, they all require the nutrients. And digestion is of two types, the mechanical digestion and the chemical digestion. So let us know about the mechanical digestion. In mechanical digestion means it is the breakdown of larger particles of food into smaller particles. And how it is done? It is done with the help of teeth. So the teeth present in our mouth will cut the food and grind the food into smaller particles. This process of cutting and grinding the food by the teeth is known as mastication. Okay, mastication is the cutting and grinding of the food into smaller particles. So when we eat food, the food will be mixed with saliva, and the food along with the saliva is grinded by the teeth, and as a result, a soft mixture of food will be formed. A soft ball-like mixture of food is formed, which we call it as bolus. So here in this clip, you can see a small ball-like structure. Okay, ball-like structure. So this bolus is formed uh, so that it can be easy for us to swallow the grinded food. Okay, the term is bolus, and the term for the cutting and grinding of the food is mastication. So conclusively, you can say in the mechanical digestion, the food is broken down into smaller particles. And coming to the chemical digestion, which is a different story from the mechanical digestion. In the chemical digestion, the large macromolecules present in the food is split into small molecules by the action of digestive enzymes. So in the food we eat, it contains different macromolecules like the carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids. So these are present in their complex forms, and these have to be broken down into their simplest forms. And how it is done in the presence of enzymes. So for example, if we take an example of carbohydrate, let us take sucrose. So this sucrose is a disaccharide. That means it is a complex of two monosaccharide units. So this sucrose in the presence of invertase enzyme is broken down into glucose and fructose. Glucose and fructose are monosaccharides. So these are the simplest form of carbohydrates. And when we talk about proteins, you all know that proteins are the polymers of amino acids, or you can say amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So a large number of amino acids joined by the peptide bonds will form proteins. Now these proteins in the presence of enzymes will be broken down into small chains of amino acids, that is tripeptides and dipeptides. And these di and tripeptides will further be broken down into single amino acid units. And these amino acids are the simplest forms of proteins. So monosaccharides are the simplest forms of carbohydrates, and amino acids are the simplest forms of proteins. And these can be easily absorbed into the blood circulation. Now let us know about the functions. What are all the functions that the digestive system will perform in order to complete the digestion of the food? So the mechanical processing, I have told you earlier, it is the grinding, cutting and grinding of the food. And ingestion, ingestion means deglutition. Swallowing, swallowing is known as deglutition. Transport. So for the digestion process to happen, the food has to be transported from one part of the digestive tract to the other part. So from the mouth, it has to be transported to the esophagus, then to the stomach, then to the intestines. So this will happen by a process called peristalsis. So we will discuss this in the coming slides. And then secretion, different fluids, different enzymes are secreted into the digestive tract to support the digestion process. And the digestion means conversion of the food we eat into nutrients. Absorption is the entry of the nutrients from the digestive tract into the blood circulation, is known as absorption. And then excretion. So after absorption of all the nutrients, the remaining undigested food or the remaining waste is excreted out of the body. So that is known as excretion. Now coming to the pH of the digestive tract. pH means it is a level of acidity and basicity in different parts of the digestive tract. So let us know about that. Mouth has a pH of around 6.5 to 7.5. So you can say this as a neutral pH. So why the mouth has a neutral pH? It is because of the presence of saliva in the mouth. So we eat different kinds of foods, like the foods which are acidic in nature, the foods which are basic in nature. So when it comes to foods which are acidic in nature, like the citrus fruits, the lemon, the orange, and also the cherries, coffee, these will shift our mouth pH from neutral to acidic levels. So when the mouth pH becomes acidic, it will try to cause damage to the outer covering of the teeth, that is the enamel. So the outer covering of the teeth is known as enamel. So when this enamel gets damaged, the inner portion of the teeth will be exposed to all the food that we eat, and it will cause teeth decay or dental cavities. So in order to avoid all these complications, the saliva will always try to maintain the mouth's pH at a neutral level. Now coming to the stomach, if you divide the stomach into two parts, the upper stomach and the lower stomach, the upper stomach has a pH around 4.0 to 6.5, whereas the lower stomach has a pH of around 1.5 to 4.0. So from this you can say that the upper stomach has a slightly less acidic pH than the lower stomach. Why? Let us know that. So when it enters the stomach from the esophagus, the food will directly fall into the lower portion of the stomach. And also the hydrochloric acid secreted into the stomach will get accumulated in the lower part. Okay, here. In the lower part, all the food and the HCl will be present, and the upper part will remain empty. So that's why, as all the hydrochloric acid and the food is present in the lower part of the lower stomach has a highly acidic pH. Now, coming to the small intestine, you all know that the small intestine is divided into three parts: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. So the duodenum has a slightly acidic pH. Why means when the food from the stomach enters the small intestine, along with the food, the hydrochloric acid will also enter the duodenum. So that's why the duodenum has a pH around 6, which is a slightly acidic pH. And as the food travels from the duodenum to the jejunum, the pH will shift to 9, which is a basic pH. So why this will happen? It is because of the alkaline fluids that are being secreted in the small intestine. So these alkaline fluids will neutralize the HCl present in the food. And in the ileum, the pH will again come back to 7.4. And as the food travels from the small intestine to the large intestine, the alkaline fluid present in the food, it gets absorbed. So all the alkaline fluid present will be absorbed by the inner lining of the small intestine. The alkaline fluid volume will be decreased. So that's why the basic pH will again come back to acidic pH. So that's why the pH in the large intestine will be 4.0 to 7.0. So all the alkaline fluid that has been secreted in the small intestine, they will be reabsorbed and there will not be any alkaline fluid left. So that's why the pH will again it will become 4.0. That is, it will again become acidic. So that is about the pH levels of the digestive tract. Now let us know the parts of the digestive system. So the digestive system is divided into two parts: the gastrointestinal tract and the accessory digestive organs. So the gastrointestinal tract, it is where the digestion process will happen. So it starts from the mouth and ends at the rectum. So from the mouth, the food enters into the pharynx, then into the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, and into the rectum, and then into the anus finally. So from the oral cavity, that is from the mouth, it enters into the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, and the rectum, and finally into the anus. Whereas the accessory digestive organs, so these are the organs which will support the digestion process in one way or the other. So what are the accessory organs? The teeth, the tongue, the salivary glands, the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. So these organs will support the digestion process that is happening in the digestive tract or the alimentary canal. Now, before discussing in detail about each part of the digestive system, let us know the different layers that make up the wall of the alimentary canal. So, the alimentary canal wall is made up of four different layers. Okay, the serosa, the muscularis, submucosa, and the mucosa. Serosa is the if we go from outside to inside of the wall of the alimentary canal. If we go from outside to inside, serosa is the outermost layer or it is the superficial layer of the alimentary canal. And immediate to serosa, the muscularis layer is present. So from the name itself, you can say that it is a layer composed of muscle, smooth muscle. So it is divided into two layers, the inner circular layer and the outer longitudinal layer. But there is an exception. Out of all parts of the alimentary canal, the stomach has an additional layer of muscularis, that is the oblique muscle layer. Now, why the stomach, only the stomach has this facility, I will tell you in the coming slides. The function of the muscularis layer is to perform peristalsis. Peristalsis means it is the alternate contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscles present in the wall of the alimentary canal. So, this alternate contraction and relaxation will cause the transportation of the food or it will cause the propulsion of the food from one part to other part of the alimentary canal. Now the other layer is the submucosal layer. So it is the layer in which all the blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and the nerves will be present. Now the innermost layer of the alimentary canal is the mucosa layer, and it is the layer which is involved in protection, secretion, and absorption. So how it performs? It is involved in protection function. So you know that in the stomach, hydrochloric acid is secreted. Now this hydrochloric acid, it is a highly acidic fluid. If it is exposed to the inner wall of the stomach, it can cause damage to the inner lining of the stomach. So there are certain cells in the inner lining of the stomach which will secrete mucus. Now this mucus will form a protective lining to the inner wall of the stomach, which will prevent the direct exposure of the HCl to the inner wall of the stomach. So thereby preventing damage to the inner wall. And in secretion, okay, different cells present in the inner lining of the alimentary canal, they will secrete different enzymes and different fluids into the alimentary canal, which will aid in the digestion of the food and absorption. So all the nutrients that we get from the digested food, they will be absorbed into the cells present in the inner lining of the alimentary canal, and from those cells they will enter into the blood circulation. So that is about the different layers that make up the wall of the alimentary canal. So this is the serosa outermost, then the muscularis, then the submucosa which contains all the blood vessels, nerves, and the lymphatic vessels, and then the innermost layer. So this is about the layers of the alimentary canal. Now let us discuss the enteric nervous system. That is the nervous system that is associated with the digestive system is known as the enteric nervous system. And it is of two types, mynthic plexus and submucosal plexus. So you all know that the neurons are the functional units of the nervous system. So in the enteric nervous system, there are two types of neurons, the mynthic plexus and the other type of neurons are the submucosal plexus. So these mynthic plexus, they are also known as plexus of 𝘂𝙁𝙁. So it is important to remember the alternate name. Okay, the mynthic plexus are also known as plexus of 𝘂𝙁𝙁. So these are a network of neurons present between the circular and longitudinal layers of the muscularis. So these mynthic plexus, they are present in the muscularis layer of the alimentary canal. And what is the function? They will control the movements of the smooth muscles of the wall of the alimentary canal. So they will control the peristalsis of the smooth muscles of the alimentary canal. So here in this clip you can see these are the peristaltic movements, the alternate contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscles of the alimentary canal. So this will promote the propulsion of the food through the digestive tract. So the function of the mynthic plexus is to control the peristaltic movements of the smooth muscles of the alimentary canal. Now the other type of the neurons is the submucosal plexus. So from the name you can say that these are the neurons which are present in the submucosal layer of the alimentary canal, and these are also known as plexus of Meissner's or Meissner's plexus. Okay, and these are present between the muscularis layer and the mucosal layer of the alimentary canal. And the function of these submucosal plexus is to control the blood flow and also the secretions to the digestive tract. So there are different secretions and different enzymes that are secreted into the digestive tract. So all these secretions will be controlled by the submucosal plexus. And the autonomic nervous system is divided into two parts, the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system. These parasympathetic and sympathetic system will control the activity of the digestive system. So if the parasympathetic system is stimulated, the activities of the digestive system will be increased. So what will happen? The peristaltic movement, that is the muscular activity of the digestive system, will be increased. The glandular secretions, the volume of the glandular secretions that are secreted into the digestive tract, they will be increased. So whenever there is the presence of food, whenever the food enters the digestive tract, the neurons will detect the presence of the food in the digestive tract, and they will send the information to the brain, and the brain in turn will send some feedback information to these neurons, ultimately resulting in the ultimately resulting an increase in the peristaltic movements and also an increase in the glandular secretions. So only if there is presence of food in the digestive tract, the muscular activity has to be increased and also the glandular secretions has to be increased. So for example, if the food is not present in the digestive tract, the sympathetic system will be stimulated and all the activities of the digestive system will be decreased. The muscular activity will be decreased and also the glandular secretions will be decreased. So if the food is not present in the digestive tract, what is the use of all these secretions? So that's why the sympathetic system will be activated and the activities of the digestive system will be decreased. So that is about the enteric nervous system. Now let us discuss in detail about each part of the alimentary canal. Let us start with the mouth. So mouth, it is the space present inside the mouth is known as the oral cavity or the buccal cavity. So the space present inside the mouth is known as the oral cavity or the buccal cavity. Now the mouth encloses different parts, the teeth, the tongue, the salivary glands and also the tonsils. The soft and hard palate will form the roof of the mouth. So this is the hard palate. Okay, is anterior portion, hard structure. This is the hard palate, and the posterior portion, which is soft, is known as soft palate. So the hard palate and the soft palate will form the roof of the mouth, and the tongue forms the floor of the buccal cavity, and the cheeks will form the lateral walls of the buccal cavity. Now the cheeks are made up of buccinator muscles and the lips are made up of orbicularis oris muscles. Remember the names. And the inner surface of each lip is attached to its corresponding gums by a fold of mucous membrane called labial frenulum. So gums are nothing but these are fleshy structures which will accommodate teeth. Okay, they will form pockets and they will accommodate teeth. And to those gums, the lip is attached by a fold of mucous membrane called labial frenulum. And tonsils are present on either sides of the cavity. So here, these are the tonsils. So tonsils are nothing but they are a part of the lymphatic system. They are lymphoid organs. So whenever some germs or certain bacteria, if it enters our body through the food we eat, these tonsils they will try to trap those germs and they will kill them. Okay, preventing further complications in our body. And also the cheeks, the function of the cheeks and the lips is to hold the food while chewing. So it will prevent the spillage of the food while chewing, and also they help in talking. That is another function. Now coming to the tongue. Okay, tongue is a voluntary skeletal muscle. So the tongue is a skeletal muscle and its function is voluntary. That means the movements of the tongue muscle is in our control. We can control the movements of the tongue, and it is attached to the hyoid bone by a fold of mucous membrane called lingual frenulum. So here the hyoid bone will be present here. This is the larynx, and above the larynx the hyoid bone will be present. Okay, this is the hyoid bone, and to this hyoid bone the tongue will be attached. Okay, the hyoid bone will help in keeping the tongue in its position. So it will stabilize the position of the tongue. And if you observe, if you touch the upper surface of the tongue, it will be somewhat rough. So why the upper surface of the tongue has a rough texture? It is because of the presence of small structures called lingual papillae. So because of the presence of lingual papillae, the upper surface of the tongue has a rough texture. So let us know about those lingual papillae. Okay, the papillae are of four types. Okay, papillae are of four types. The filiform papillae, the fungiform papillae, circumvallate papillae, and the foliate papillae. So, of all the four types of papillae, the filiform papillae doesn't have the ability to sense or detect flavor. So, what is the ultimate function of this lingual papillae? It is to detect the flavors or the taste of the food and the temperature and also touch. So, these are the functions of the lingual papillae. But the filiform papillae, out of all the remaining papillae, they do not have gustatory buds. That means they do not have the ability to detect flavors of the food. So let us discuss in detail about each lingual papillae. Fungiform papillae, these are located on sides and tip of the tongue with highest density at the tip. So they are present on the sides and also at the tip of the tongue. More number are present at the tip. And their function is to detect the flavor, particularly the sweet flavor. Okay, the tip of the tongue particularly has the ability to detect the sweet flavor of the food, and also it has the ability to detect the temperature. They can sense the temperature and also they can sense the touch. So if we drink certain hot beverages like the coffee, tea, how we will know that the beverage is hot? It is because of this fungiform papillae. They have the ability to sense temperature of the food or the beverages that we intake. Now the filiform papillae, these are the most numerous of the lingual papillae. That means of all the lingual papillae, the filiform papillae are present more in number and they are present on the anterior surface. So these here, here the filiform papillae will be present. It is the anterior surface. So this portion is the anterior surface of the tongue. In the anterior surface, the filiform papillae are present, and their function is to sense the touch. So I have told you earlier, the filiform papillae, they do not have the ability to sense the flavor of the food. They only have the power to sense the touch. Now coming to the circumvallate, they are small bumps present on the back of the tongue. They appear larger than the other types of papillae. So here, these small bump-like structure, these are the circumvallate papillae. They are larger in size when compared to the other papillae, and their function is to detect the bitter taste. Okay, bitter taste of the food. And the other function of the circumvallate papillae is that they are involved in a phenomena called gag reflex. So, what is this gag reflex? So, whenever a foreign object like a stick of a popsicle or a ice cream stick, whenever it tries to enter our mouth, there is a circumvallate papillae. They will sense the presence of the foreign object and they will cause the contraction of the muscles of the throat, preventing the entry of that foreign object into the esophagus or into the pharynx or into the throat. So they will prevent the entry of the foreign object. That is known as the gag reflex. And coming to the foliate, they are located on the sides of the back of the tongue. Okay, on the sides. So here, on the back of the tongue, they are present on the sides. Here, the foliate papillae will be present. So conclusively, there are about four types of lingual papillae: the filiform, fungiform, circumvallate, and the foliate. The fungiform will detect the sweet taste. The filiform doesn't have the ability to detect taste. The circumvallate can detect the bitter taste, and the foliate papillae can detect the sour taste. So these are about the different lingual papillae. And we will discuss the salivary glands. From the salivary glands, we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.